Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
It is Season 3, Episode 8. We're talking wide receivers today, Austin. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of who the Steelers have. Obviously, they have Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Juju Smith-Schuster, all under contract. Returning is Darius Heyward-Bey, and just recently re-signed was Justin Hunter. We'll get to him in a little bit. And they also have wide receivers Trey Griffey, Tevin Jones, Justin Thomas, and Marcus Tucker on the practice squad and or signed to reserve future contracts. So, of those players, what do the Steelers have?
I've been starting from the top up, so I want to change it up and start from the bottom here. Tevin Jones, Trey Griffey, and Justin Thomas are all camp players that will probably not hang around at the first set of rounds. They'll probably hang around on the practice squad, at least one of them. However, Marcus Tucker has been that too, but this may finally be the year that he cracks the roster. He impressed me in the preseason last year, and with the Steelers' lack of backup this year, he may finally get his chance to crack the roster, and I'm rooting for him. Next up is Justin Hunter. He got a new one-year deal, as you said, but I don't consider him safe to make this year's roster at all, especially for a rookie he's brought in. Hunter didn't really contribute much on the season, just the one touchdown against the Texans, but that was really it. And yet, if you've listened to this podcast for a while now, you know I dislike Hunter. And I am rooting for Tucker to take his spot this year. Next is Heyward-Bey. This could be Heyward-Bey's last season with the Steelers as their special teams ace. The past season, he almost never was featured as a wide receiver, and his first catch of the year came from Robert Golden on a special teams play. He also isn't guaranteed to make the roster this year since he's only a special teams contributor, and the Steelers were always thinking about that when they brought in Matthew Slater. But I still do think Heyward-Bey will be on the roster. Next is Marty B. This is without a doubt the last season he will be a Steeler. I'm hoping for good things from him. In the beginning of the season, he disappointed me as I was expecting old Martavis Bryant. Then he only disappointed me further by causing problems on social media on a few occasions. But after he calmed down on social media, I got accustomed to current Martavis Bryant and came to terms with it. He's a decent wide receiver 3. He's nowhere near as good as rookie Bryant was, but he's still a good wide receiver 3. He can't catch a contested ball to save his life, though. Next up is Juju Smith-Schuster. We expected him to crack the lineup about halfway through the season, but it happened much quicker than expected. Eli Rogers disappeared, and in came Juju, an immediate contributor that worked his way into the hearts of Steelers fans. However, it didn't start so good. He had a few holding penalties and not so much production in the beginning. But he really started to heat up about halfway through and came alive in the Lions game where he set the Steelers record for longest passing touchdown in history. I expect some great things next year, as I think he will only get better. Finally, that leaves Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown cannot be described by simple words. He transcends our puny beings as he is a football god working on being one of the top receivers of all time. Scared of returning balls, though, and that is the only bad thing I could ever say about Antonio Brown. So what do you have to say about the wide receivers the Steelers currently have?
Well, I'll go the traditional route in talking about them. So first, Antonio Brown. There's no longer any sane debate you can make. He is the best receiver in football. He contrasts his athleticism and spectacular catches with consistently important grabs, and he has good fundamentals. There isn't a single weakness in his game, and his chemistry with Ben Roethlisberger makes 100-catch seasons seem easy. Brown just reached that in barely 14 games and was playing some of the best football of his life this past season, which should really be saying something. He is a fantastic weapon to have, and again, the best receiver in the game. There's no doubt about it. Juju Smith-Schuster, the rookie, broke out in a big way last year, setting the Steelers' rookie record for receiving yards. He definitely, I don't know, I don't like saying probably because I suppose it wouldn't have happened, but he more than likely would have had a 1,000-yard season had he not missed one game due to injury and another due to suspension. But he really broke out in the last 10 games of the year. After not playing much in the first quarter of the season, he really matured beyond his years, going from a rotational player with Eli Rogers to a full-time starter. And he made some big, important grabs and had a few huge games that really propelled the Steelers' offense from being kind of an average at best unit to one of the best ones in the league in the second half. And yes, he had a disappointing playoff debut, but at the same time, a lot of Steelers had a bad day there, and he still caught a touchdown pass, so it wasn't the worst day in the world for him. Beyond that is Martavis Bryant. Like the rest of the Steelers offense, they had a lackluster first half and a great second half, and Bryant was a great example of it. He fell short of the lofty expectations he had last year and quickly became a public enemy of the fans. For those who don't remember, he requested a trade mid-season for not being involved enough in the offense. But after being benched in Detroit for his social media outbursts against Juju Smith-Schuster, he turned his season around and finally started resembling at least a bit the quality player we knew him to be. His reemergence was key in the Steelers' offense improving in the second half last year. And after having to readjust to the game, I expect 2018 will be a year that he has one of his better years. Maybe not the years we saw in his first and second year, but I expect a really good one, considering that this is a contract year for him and he knows that this is probably his last chance to make some serious money in the NFL. Darius Heyward-Bey and Justin Hunter are the current backups with good NFL experience and some quality play. But as you touched on, Austin, he's not really a receiver anymore. He's pretty much just a special teams player, and Hunter isn't really a consistent option to be an impact. So there could stand to be some improvement there. Marcus Tucker and Justin Thomas are players the coaching staff likes. Time will tell if they are worthy of the praise they have received. And beyond them, Griffey and Jones are more likely camp bodies with outside shots at making the roster. For those who don't remember, Griffey is the son of Baseball Hall of Famer Ken Griffey Jr. So now that we've taken a look at the position group, there was one player that was cut that hasn't been brought back right now. That's Eli Rogers, and there was a question, or I guess a soundbite from Mike Tomlin talking about the potential of bringing Eli Rogers back, that he was quote-unquote critical to the offense. I don't know if I agree with that sentiment, but do you think the Steelers should be interested in bringing back Eli Rogers for the right price?
I'm really not a fan. He's coming off a really bad season where he completely disappointed, and it's not only that, he finished the year with an ACL injury, and it's already hard enough to come back from an ACL injury. So I really just think it's not something I want to revisit. I'm not a personal fan of it, even for depth. I think you could find another just backup wide receiver. I'd honestly prefer that Steelers go after Kobe Hamilton again, but what do you think?
Considering the current state of the position after the first three players, I do want him back. Despite a rough season, I find it hard to believe the Steelers would be better off with Justin Hunter, DHB, and a combination of Marcus Tucker or a later round pick. Even if it's just for training camp, I think you should want to bring him back. I understand he had a really down year last year, but he also didn't get a lot of playing time either compared to what he got 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, he had a really nice season. So I think he should get one more chance, again, at the right price, though. So I'm not sure if he's going to be re-signed, but I think it's something that's worth looking for. So, Austin, we've talked about free agency at really most positions. The free agency need here is pretty much non-existent just because of the fact that the free agent market is pretty much dried up now that we're just over a couple weeks away from the NFL draft. Were there any receivers that you saw in the free agent list that you were interested in?
The last wide receiver just got signed, and he was one of my favorites, and it was Cameron Meredith. He just got signed to the Saints, and the Bears still have. He was a restricted free agent, so the Bears still have a chance to match the Saints' offer. But I really liked Cameron Meredith, and I thought because of his ACL injury, people forgot about him because he was really good for the Bears 2 years ago, and the Bears are bad. So I really think with Drew Brees, Cameron Meredith is going to be dangerous. So now, no, there's no more wide receivers left.
Alrighty, what about in the draft? Is there any interest in bringing a guy in during the draft?
I would say so. With Eli Rogers gone for now, and the Steelers having to start planning for the future without Bell, yes, Bell, I think a wide receiver is the first position the Steelers should definitely draft. What do you think?
Yeah, with Justin Hunter being re-signed, even with that being the case, it's still a very top-heavy position. They need at least one more guy to help solidify the back end of the group. Even if they added Eli Rogers back, I'd still be an advocate for drafting a guy in the later rounds, just because you really aren't sure what there is behind the starting three right now. Yeah, Justin Hunter has played a bit, and he's played well at times, but he'd only had 23 yards last year. DHB isn't really a receiver anymore, and then you have practice squad guys. So how much are they going to contribute? So it's very close to, again, being the situation in 2016 where you have Kobe Hamilton starting alongside Antonio Brown. So that's not something that you want. So that being the case, Austin, let's talk about some prospects. If the Steelers go early, they go late. What's one name that stuck out to you as far as who Steelers fans should be taking a look at?
The first prospect I am looking at is DJ Chark from LSU. He's 6'3" and 199 pounds. Chark didn't become a contributor at wide receiver until his third year at LSU in 2016. That year, he went from no receptions to 26 catches for 466 yards with 3 touchdowns. In 2017, he took on the number 1 receiving role at LSU after Malachi Dupree and Travin Durrell both left. But it wasn't. If that wasn't enough pressure, he took on the number 7 that year, Fournette's old number. Last season, he had 40 receptions for 874 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then also attempted 12 rushes, gaining 63 yards and a touchdown. So what he's good at is he's both the tallest and fastest prospect that we'll be looking at today. He's just got a good combination of size and speed. It doesn't take him long to get to top speed either. His acceleration is both smooth and sudden. This causes problems for defenders as he's gone away from people without even trying his hardest. Because of his speed, he really shines on West Coast routes, or routes that are typically within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, because he burns his man quick with his long strides. Then he's got a really nasty double move that he sells really well and often leaves defenders off balance and or stumbling. Another thing good about Chark is he has a toughness to him. He's a willing blocker if necessary, and he also works the middle of the field with ease, unintimidated by hard hitters. Next, he's been pretty explosive and not a lot of touches, getting 10 touchdowns on 86 career touches and having 36% of his catches going for 25 or more yards. Finally, he is a quality punt returner. Watching his highlights and seeing 2 of his punt return touchdowns, he looks electric out there with his agility and pure speed. So on the other side of things, while he definitely has good speed, it's really all he uses to beat defenders. He doesn't have the route focus or urgency you really want. Really, his route running is what's the most work going into the NFL. There are a few problems he has surrounding his route running. The first being he can get leggy and sluggish in an elite field when it is crowded. Another being that his route tree will likely be limited on the second and third level in the NFL just to linear routes and rounded routes, which isn't exactly desirable. Then the last problem with his route running is he often comes out upright into them. He also has some physicality problems, like he isn't an effective hand fighter at all, and he's going to need to improve his upper body strength on the next level if he wants to be both an effective blocker and not get worked by press corners. He has already shown that his frame is easy to work with for press corners, so he's really going to have to try and get stronger. Then finally, his ball tracking isn't good. It's very uneven and he has a tendency to slow his feet when tracking the deep ball, which isn't good. So Clark's ceiling is probably a quality number 2 on an NFL team, but that is no guarantee. He hasn't been consistent is the bottom line. Sometimes flashing greatness, other times not so much. A scout from the NFC has said he doesn't know whether he will be making the necessary improvements to be an NFL factor. Even just getting his strength up, though, will help him immensely on the next level. But as of right now, because of his flaws, he will likely be going somewhere in the third round with the possibility of going late in the second, but that's a bit of a reach. So who's the first prospect you looked at?
The first prospect I looked at was DJ Moore out of the University of Maryland. He broke out as a junior at Maryland in 2017. He nearly doubled his reception totals from 2016, which is impressive, and he won the Big Ten Receiver of the Year award last year while also making the first team All-Big Ten. He actually caught passes from 4 different quarterbacks last year, and he started in all 12 games. He caught 80 passes, which is a school record at Maryland, for 1,033 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2017. Although he nearly doubled his numbers from his sophomore season, he had a good year in 2016 as well. In fact, he actually led the team in receiving with only 637 yards on 41 catches and 6 touchdowns. He saw limited action his freshman year, catching 25 passes for 357 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he's actually from Pennsylvania, so you can believe that the Steelers fans and brass are going to have their eyes on him. So what does DJ Moore do well? He's not the tallest receiver. He's only 6 foot, but he has decent height, and he's pretty fast too. His coaches give him have a ton of great things to say about him, and according to his teammates, he was very accountable, and he was a leader both on and off the field. He actually received nearly 40% of his team's targets last season, which shows that he was a highly relied upon player on the offense. Quick feet will allow him to get past press coverage, and he has those afterburners that coaches are looking for in deep threat receivers. Moore was recognized by scouts for his willingness and ability to come back to the ball when a ball was underthrown. His hands aren't great, but they are big and strong, and that was displayed on several instances where he had to catch passes that were thrown behind him. Moore accelerates very quickly, making him a threat to score on those quick-hitting screens and flare routes that the Steelers love to run. He's very elusive after the catch and tries to get as many yards as he possibly can. He adds another dynamic as a punt returner, too, so that's going to be interesting for some teams that are looking for a punt returner as well. As far as what he doesn't do well, though, a lot of his collegiate production came from simple throws, and his route tree is not very advanced. He can be pushed off his route and won't be adjusting very properly after he gets bumped off the line. He's not physical enough at the top of his route, keeping defensive backs close to him on timing throws, and the further the ball is thrown, the less likely he's going to come down with it. He just doesn't know what to do when it comes to body positioning and high-pointing the ball. Despite having easy routes to run, he had way too many miscommunication issues with his quarterbacks, and yes, that could be attributed to having 4 different quarterbacks, but when you run such a simple route tree, that shouldn't be happening very often. So bottom line, DJ Moore has drawn comparisons in athleticism to former Maryland Terrapin Stephon Diggs, but Moore isn't quite as tall as some teams would like outside receivers to be, so he could be moved to the slot full time, but he would fit well there. He has short area quickness and talent to be a dangerous receiver after the catch, but his route running needs to be improved significantly before he can become the dangerous receiver that scouts believe he can be. His contributions in the return game may help him get drafted as early as the 2nd round, but he could also slip to as late as the 4th round because of his route running. So he's a decent option, but an early option nonetheless if the Steelers are looking for an impactful wide receiver. What's another receiver Steelers fans should be paying attention to at the draft, Austin?
The second one is Kiki QT. He is from Texas Tech and 5'11" and 180 pounds. Kivantini Cutie, a.k.a. Kiki, is hoping to be the next best receiver out of Texas Tech, behind Michael Crabtree and Wes Welker. In 2016, he earned honorable mention all-conference recognition with 55 receptions for 890 yards and 7 touchdowns. Then in 2017, he earned himself second-team All-Big 12 honors with 1,429 receiving yards on 93 catches with 10 touchdowns. In his last game at Texas Tech, he put up huge numbers with 11 receptions for 187 yards and a touchdown in the Birmingham Bowl. Also in his time in college, he showed production as a kick returner, returning 10 kickoffs for 315 yards, including a 92-yard touchdown. He's been a Texas man all his life, coming from Lufkin, Texas, and staying to play ball with the Red Raiders, but this draft will probably change that. So starting with his speed, he's got some pretty great deep speed, often eating up coverage cushion a defender lays with just his initial push into routes. Then, if he doesn't beat a defender there, separation comes easily for him, and he finds a way to make space. With his explosive speed, he often needs attention from the safeties, regardless of where he is on the field, as he has used it to turn slants and mesh routes into long touchdowns. That being said, he could really benefit from a team that uses him a lot of option routes. I think those routes are where he thrives the most. Over the middle, he has the most desired focus. He has the desired focus to secure a throw even when in traffic. Then finally, he looks as though he will have an impact as a returner on the next level, as he averaged 5 yards per kick return in a limited role in 2017. So what's not so good about him is his frame. It's very spindly. He's probably going to have to bulk up a little more to survive in the NFL. That's not the only reason, though. His play strength is below average, and a little bit more added strength would do him some good there. Also, it helped him to play through contact and keep his route timely because he hasn't proven he can handle physical corners. Speaking of routes, his route running he has an inconsistent pace, making it hard for a quarterback to hit him with the ball. He also has never really been asked to run more complex routes, just basic ones that kept the most action short. If his route is in traffic, he's not very reliable for a catch to be made, as his contested catching is below average. Then finally, he's not very tough at all, willingly giving in to a tackler on his runs after the catch. So there's scouts calling Kiki a scheme talent, questioning his jump to the NFL, but it's really hard to tell. I personally think if he just puts on a bit more bulk, he could be very dangerous on the next level. As of right now, though, he's likely going in the 3rd or 4th round, mostly because teams do think he's just a scheme talent. Otherwise, he'd probably go higher. So who is your second prospect?
My second prospect is Anthony Miller out of Memphis University. It didn't take him long to become a breakout player at Memphis. He did redshirt in 2014, but he caught 47 passes for 694 yards and 5 touchdowns his sophomore year, and he broke out in his junior season as he made a huge jump as far as his production goes. He caught 95 passes for 1,434 yards and 14 touchdowns, earning him an All-AAC selection. He followed that up with an even better senior season, catching 96 passes for 1,462 yards and 18 touchdowns. So he got in the end zone quite a lot in his collegiate career. As far as what he does well, he might be slightly undersized for a receiver, but Miller makes up for it by being an aggressive player at the start of the play. His quick feet and head fakes usually give him a chance to gain inside or outside leverage depending on the route he's running. He accelerates quickly out of his cuts, creating a lot of separation on a number of routes, including comeback routes, hitch routes, curl in and out routes, among others. His tenacity and strong will comes from being a former walk-on, and it can be seen when he battles for man coverage, as he treats the cornerback as his enemy, and he's been able to play effectively in all 3 levels of the field, that being short, intermediate, and deep areas of the field. Miller is great at tracking the ball, and the further down the field he goes, the more focused he becomes. He has fantastic body control and uses that to his advantage when he has to catch an overthrown or underthrown ball. There were a number of plays he made on contested catches in college. He has great footwork on the sidelines, which you like to see, and good chemistry with his quarterbacks when they had to scramble after the play broke down. Miller tries to make every play with the ball in his hands, and he's very dangerous after the catch. Unfortunately for him, though, his strides aren't long enough right now, meaning he's not as fast as he could be. He struggled with zone coverage at times and didn't make the proper reads before deciding where he needed to end up. So those choice routes that the Steelers like to have their receivers run is not something he's good at right now. He's not efficient in his technique when he's running routes either. Specifically with his upper body, he wastes a lot of time and energy with excess movement in his torso and arms. Miller did display good quickness in college, but he wasn't overly fast either. Despite great concentration on deep passes, the concentration actually disappears on short routes, leading to frustrating and unnecessary drops on drag and slant routes close to the line of scrimmage. Besides drops, he had to double catch some of those passes too. He also had a fumbling problem, finishing with 5 in his collegiate career, and that might not seem like a lot in 3 different years combined, but think about it. Running backs touch the ball sometimes 3 to 4 times more per season than receivers do. Just for instance, Bell is an extreme example, but he had 400 touches last year where Antonio Brown had just over 100. So when you're touching the ball that many fewer times and you're fumbling that much more, it's quite concerning. So bottom line, despite not being a very tall or overly speedy player, Anthony Miller is a very competitive player and a very hard worker. Coaches say that he plays with a chip on his shoulder that makes him a desirable player to have on any team. Does that remind you of anyone, by the way?
No.
Despite his ability to play on both the inside and outside at Memphis, some teams may try to keep him in the slot, though. His hands and mental lapses close to the line of scrimmage are a concern, but are fixable. He could probably slide in as a number 3 receiver with the chance to become even better in the coming years. So an intriguing option there in the mid to late rounds. Anthony Miller from Memphis. Keep your eye on him, Austin. Who is your third prospect that you evaluated?
My third prospect is James Washington out of Oklahoma State. He is 5'11" and 213 pounds. Washington is an all-around athlete, having played tennis and track along with football in high school. Coming from a small school, he worked his way up in the football world, going to several football camps until he was finally noticed by Oklahoma State. As a true freshman, he was an immediate contributor, having 27 receptions, 456 yards, and 6 touchdowns in just 5 games started. In his next season, he got even better, with 53 receptions, 1,087 yards, and 10 touchdowns, 4 of which were from 70 or more yards, which led the FBS. He won the team's Thurman Thomas Most Valuable Offensive Player Award for it that year, and continued terrorizing defense in 2016. In 2015, he had 71 receptions for 1,380 yards and 9 touchdowns, earning himself a first-team All-Big 12 pick. In his final year, he was named to several All-American teams, was a finalist for the Fred Biletnikoff Award, and was a first-team All-Conference pick for 74 receptions, 1,549 yards, and a whopping 13 touchdowns. So a lot of his positives relate to his speed and acceleration. He can escape from press with ease because of his initial quickness. He surprises cornerbacks with his build-up speed and consistently gets past them. He accelerates from the stems on post routes and creates open deep looks for the quarterbacks. He has runaway speed after the catch to get home. His deep speed creates a cushion for him that defenders need to respect. Otherwise, he kills them with comeback routes, and he can adjust his speed to match the speed of the ball and keep the cornerbacks stacked. So, yeah, anything to do with speed, he basically has it down pat. He's not the fastest prospect I'm looking at, but he definitely knows how to use the speed he has to his advantage. He's definitely a vertical talent as well, as he has averaged over 20 yards per catch over the past 3 seasons. Probably his best trait, in my opinion, though, is that he's physical. He will go up and come down with a deep ball with the best of them, and he will get physical after the catch to try and get that extra yardage. Then finally, as a receiver, he is versatile as he has worked outside and from the slot. So on the other side of things, a couple problems for Washington aren't necessarily problems. He just lacks exposure. The first one is that while playing in the Big 12, he was hardly ever challenged by press coverage, so we don't have a big sample size to see how well he would do there. Then the other exposure issue is that he hasn't been asked to run that many complex routes while at OSU. His exposure to the route tree has been limited. It may be because he doesn't have the skill set for the more fluid ones, but we don't really know that. Then some actual weaknesses he has is that he has a top-heavy frame that's high cut like a running back's, which causes him to roll into breaks rather than sink sharply into them. His footwork could use some work, and he lacks the short area footwork and suddenness to win underneath against tight man coverage. Then finally, he's a smooth, easy pass catcher, sometimes fighting throws, and he sometimes has issues finishing contested catches on the first and second levels. So Washington was Mason Rudolph's favorite target at OSU, and for good reason. He had such great play speed, and he's a vertical threat that all defense need to respect. Unfortunately, he may not be able to handle all the complex routes of the NFL or even press coverage. We simply don't know. That's really what's holding him out of going round 1. It's because of those flaws that he will likely be going somewhere in round 2. But I can see a team using a first round on him, and I also can't see him slipping into the third round unless something comes up. So that is James Washington from Oklahoma State. Who is your third prospect?
My third prospect has a name that you might recognize, and Steelers fans might and should recognize if they've been fans for a while. That's Cedric Wilson Jr., and that may sound familiar because his father, Cedric Wilson, played for the Steelers from 2005 to 2007 and was a part of the Super Bowl 40 champions, catching a touchdown pass against the Cincinnati Bengals in the wildcard game. As a matter of fact, it's only been 11 years since his father stopped playing football, but the younger Wilson has been making a name for himself in the college ranks. Wilson was an all-state selection in Tennessee as a quarterback in high school before becoming a receiver at Coffeyville Community College. And he actually earned an all-conference selection as a freshman and was named an All-American his sophomore year when he caught a whopping 66 passes for 1,045 yards and 17 touchdowns. I remember, Austin, we were talking yesterday about Ian Thomas, the tight end from Indiana University and Nassau Community College, how 23 catches was a lot for him at a community college where they don't play many games. 66 is unbelievable. So that's quite an achievement. And he immediately fit in after transferring to Boise State, catching 56 passes for 1,129 yards, and he led his team with 11 touchdowns his junior year while also returning punts. His senior season, he earned all Mountain West honors for the second year in a row by catching 83 passes for 1,511 yards, and he scored 7 touchdowns. So what does Wilson do well? He does a lot of things well. He has some history on his side, though, with his father being a former NFL player. He has NFL pedigree, but it's not even that his father was a good player. In fact, his father might be what you'd consider an average player, a number 3 receiver. So his father had to work hard to stay in the league for his entire career. And that work ethic was instilled in his son, and that's obviously a good thing to be known for. Wilson looks like an NFL receiver too. He's tall and he has good speed, with the desire to catch every ball that's thrown his way. Wilson worked on the outside and in the slot while both in his community college and at Boise State. He has an arsenal of subtle moves which he uses on his routes to get separation from opposing defenders. He uses his hips to intentionally get defenders to try to commit to a route that they think he's running early before blowing past them. Wilson has the afterburners on deep routes that allow him to catch up to overthrown passes, and he got thrown a ton of deep balls too. As a matter of fact, 26% of his catches went for 25 or more yards. He's a dangerous receiver with the ball in his hands too. He gets a ton of yak yardage in college, and a former high school quarterback, he was also used at times in gadget plays. When he was asked to throw the ball, he was successful too. He also has versatility as a punt and kick returner too. So on the flip side, though, Wilson's a step slower than the fastest receivers in this draft, and he struggled against aggressive bump and run cornerbacks. This was evidenced as poor balance knocked him off of his routes, and his bad footwork often led him to falling in the middle of his route at times. And he has decent ball skills, but his hand-eye coordination isn't great, and he doesn't make adjustments as quickly as you'd like him to when the ball's in the air. He doesn't really catch many passes away from his body either, and if you're looking for highlight reel catches, they're not going to come from him. So bottom line, if Wilson can't make it in the NFL, it's not going to be because of his work ethic and desire. It's fantastic. His is up there with the best receiving prospects in the league, or prospects in the draft this year. Questions about his footwork, though, college competition, and consistency will keep teams from drafting him early, but he has the potential to be a solid number 2 or 3 receiver in a couple years and could potentially become more than that as well. So now that we've talked about the son of a former Steeler Super Bowl winning wide receiver, what's another receiver that you've had your eyes on?
I wonder what it is about Coffeyville Community College that just makes players change position, that they realize what they should be. Because I know you just said it, that your prospect that you just went over, he went to Coffeyville as a quarterback and switched to wide receiver. That is the second prospect that we looked at that went to Coffeyville as one position and switched the other. The other one was Jamarcus King. He was a wide receiver, and he turned cornerback at Coffeyville and then moved on to I forget where. But I just find that funny that there's another player from Coffeyville that switched position and found out he was better at another position.
The coaches were just...
my final
I was just saying the coaches...
prospect is Quadri Henderson from Pittsburgh. People should be familiar with him. He is 5'8" and 190 pounds. Trying to make it as a top receiver while being shorter is hard, but Quadri Henderson achieved that. He was the top overall high school recruit out of the state of Delaware in 2014, standing at just 5'8". He had earned first-team All-State honors in high school as a receiver, returner, and defensive back. Now that's pretty impressive. As a true freshman at Pitt, he played in 9 games and returned 18 kicks for 504 yards, including a 100-yard touchdown against Navy in the Military Bowl. The next season, he earned All-American honors as a returner after leading the FBS in return yardage with 1,166 yards, third in yards per punt return with 15.8, and fifth in average kick return yards for the country with 30.5 yards per kick return. He wasn't only great as a returner, though. He was an integral part of the offense as both a receiver and as a runner. He had 26 catches for 286 yards and a touchdown, as well as 60 rushing attempts for 631 yards and 5 touchdowns. In 2017, his stats weren't as good, but he was still a second-team All-ACC pick as a specialist by returning 2 punts or touchdowns and finishing as Pitt's all-time leader with 7 return scores. So Henderson may be the best punt returner coming out of this draft. He has been one of the top return specialists in college ball, after all. He has a no-nonsense return style, often staying on track and hits it downhill fast. Thus, when he gets to top speed, he stays there since he doesn't try to get cute, and he gets to top speed fast, as he said. He gets a rapid turnover from his feet that causes instant acceleration. However, if the contained falters on both runs and returns, he will find it and exploit it. Then he's been so productive as a returner in college. 11 of 37 punt returns have gone for 15-plus yards, and as I said, he has 7 career punt return touchdowns. Now as a rusher, he is great on the jet sweep specifically. Watching his highlights, he is great on them because he's so agile. A whopping 32% of his rush attempts went for 10 or more yards, mostly because he has an in player and just hits holes with ease, but also because he fakes at full speed and makes the defenders bite and lose their balance. So what's not so good about him? You might have noticed I didn't really talk about him as a receiver when talking about his strengths. In fact, I said nothing to do with receiving, if you were paying attention. That's because he is solely a gadget player on offense, really. He was only used on jet sweeps for the most part and slip screens, leading to him only having 17 catches this past season. He hasn't really run any kind of a route tree at Pitt and really lacks crisp, sharp routes. On hitch routes, he doesn't sink and open himself to the quarterback quick enough from his tape. Then, at this time, he isn't useful over the middle of the field. He's shown that he is afraid of taking a big hit, a.k.a. hearing footsteps when he is in the middle of the field. Despite being agile on jet sweeps, he struggles to gather weight and elude defenders in open field because he's always at his fastest. Then finally, he has small hands and has fumbled a whopping 5 times in his career, which isn't so good. So Henderson is going to be as a special teams player and not much else. He might be able to be brought in for a few trick plays and might have a minor contribution on offense, but he won't really make an impact as a receiver in the NFL. He has drawn comparisons to Eric Weems of the NFL for good reason. Great returner, but not so much good as a receiver. However, I think Henderson is going to be a little bit more involved in offense than Weems ever was. Luckily, Henderson's return ability carries him, as he would probably go undrafted if he wasn't such a good returner. So good that he's projected to go in either the 4th or 5th round because of it. So that is Quadri Henderson from Pittsburgh. Who is your final prospect?
Let me ask you, is there really any or that big of a difference between what you've seen from Quadri Henderson and what we saw from Dre Archer coming out of the draft?
Honestly, I was thinking that the full way through, this guy is just a special teams player, and the last time that happened, just because he was fast and could return, it didn't work out. I honestly think Quadri Henderson looks better on returns. I personally speaking, watching his highlights on his returns, he just looks like he has more better vision when he is running. Has better ball carry vision than Dre Archer did. I think he could work out better in the NFL than Dre Archer did.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm looking at Dre Archer's statistics. He never had a punt return touchdown in college. He had 3 kick return touchdowns. 4. But being a Pitt fan, I've seen a lot of football games at Pitt. I will say a lot of his production came from the creativeness of the offensive coordinator there at the time, his junior year. Excuse me. I don't know if he was a junior or redshirt sophomore, but his second to last year at Pitt, he was utilized on a ton of jet sweeps from the slot. He was a very good player, but I'm still not sure how he'd translate to the NFL, so I'd be kind of nervous to pick him. But say he's available, what round are you picking him?
I'm picking him in the 5th round if he's there. I think that would be the best time to pick him personally.
Yeah, third round like Dre Archer is way too high, I think. But if you're getting down to the 5th round, maybe 6th round, I think that'd be the best time to take him. Interesting. But in any case, the last prospect I have is Jordan Lasley out of UCLA. So Lasley is an interesting player. Despite fantastic potential in play at UCLA and his high school, Sarah, in Los Angeles, he actually had a lot of discipline problems off the field. He's had multiple suspensions over the last 4 years, including 2 in 2016 for possession of alcohol and presenting a fake ID at a nightclub, respectively. He was also suspended 3 games in 2017, which tarnished what was a career year for Lasley. He finished last year with 69 catches for 1,264 yards and 9 touchdowns in just 9 games. That earned him an honorable mention for the Pac-12 that year after he had 2 200-yard games against rivals USC and California. He caught 41 passes for 620 yards and 5 touchdowns as a sophomore 2 years ago, and as a freshman in 2015, he played in 9 games and caught just 3 passes for 17 yards. So what's great about Lasley? He has good size at 6'1" and great running speed after running a 4.5 in the 40-yard dash. He matches his great speed with good acceleration, making him a threat against smaller cornerbacks who risk a huge play against him if they miss. Lasley gets good vertical separation from his cornerbacks, and he matches that with an ability to work back to the ball as well. He's a fantastic athlete, combined with smooth technique that gets his routes, that gets him great separation in all levels of the field. He has the potential to be a great catch and run receiver with the strong stiff arm that he can use to keep smaller defensive backs away from him. This was supported by a ridiculous average of 8 yards after the catch last season. Unfortunately, though, as you might have wondered with Lasley, he has a lot of character concerns right now. With 3 suspensions, teams have to be really concerned about that going forward and whether or not he'll be able to be mature when he makes it to the NFL. But beyond that, he doesn't have enough weight and strength on his frame right now and can be bumped off track by zone defenders at the line of scrimmage. He hasn't quite figured out where he needs to be when facing zone coverage right now. He'll tend to sit too close to the defender, creating a contested throw and catch, when he could find a better place to settle. He's also a body catcher right now with poor fundamentals. It shows, too, with the career 21 drops in his collegiate career, which is very high, a 16% drop rate, too, which is also really bad. He struggles to make catches away from his body, as I already said, with most of his catches coming from his body, and he's not a willing blocker either. So the combination of his character and his, not showing the ability to make catches away from his body has been a concern. So bottom line, Lasley is a talented and capable receiver in all levels of the field. He might actually be the most talented receiver I looked at in the draft, but he also has one of the worst drop rates of any receiver prospect over the last few years. He has home run potential, but questions about his character will and should keep some teams away from him, as he has a lot to improve on in his technique too. He has early starter potential, but the red flags are going to keep him from being a first-round prospect. It's more likely he gets drafted between the 2nd and 4th round, I would imagine. So, Austin, now that we've gone over all the receiving prospects that we've looked at this offseason, rank them as far as how you think they would fit with the Steelers and who you'd like to see most in a Pittsburgh uniform.
My number 1 was Quadri Henderson. I just liked his familiarity with the city. He knows Heinz Field. He's been there. He was teammates with Connor. And it's also a budget win now pick. It's improving a spot the Steelers actually desperately needed help with. I think it's a massive improvement for the kick return team and the punt return team if he is out there. And I think that's why it's a budget win now pick. It is improving the Steelers at one of their worst spots. And it would be for a 5th round pick if they're lucky. It could be a 4th round pick, but I personally wouldn't like that. But next up is Kiki Kuti. I liked his tape, and he might be available in the 3rd round. I think that while edge is more important, I wouldn't mind seeing the Steelers take Kuti in the 3rd round. I don't think he's just a scheme talent. I think he could work out, but he might be gone by then. I think the Cowboys might take him in the 3rd round. He's a Texas guy after all, and the Dallas needs more wide receivers, so he might be gone. But 3rd is DJ Chark. It was just too high pick of a wide receiver for me. I really don't want to see the Steelers taking a wide receiver in the 2nd round. That would probably hurt my feelings to see that happen in back-to-back years. But that leaves Washington last. He was the only one who lacked return experience at all, and that kind of turned me off, and he was way too high of a pick. He was probably going at the beginning of the 2nd round, which means he would have to be taken in the 1st round if the Steelers wanted him, or the Steelers would probably have to trade back and to make it worth it. I'm just not a fan of that. So Washington comes in last, and it's not his fault. He might be one of the best receivers coming out of this draft class, but I just don't think the Steelers should take him. How do you rank your prospects?
Well, first and foremost, being that his father also played for the Steelers, and I think he's the most complete of the receivers we looked at, it's Cedric Wilson Jr. I was a fan of his father, and I'd love to see him in a Steelers uniform as well. He was consistent in college, and he had great numbers. I think he'll translate well to the NFL. I don't know if he'll be available when the Steelers are trying to pick, but it'd be great if he fell a round or two for the Steelers to pick him up. Second is Anthony Miller, and he might draw comparisons to Antonio Brown if he comes to Pittsburgh, which would kind of be unfair to him because Antonio Brown is like no other as far as the receiver position goes. But you can understand the comparisons because his work ethic and determination can't really be matched by anyone at the college level. So that's really nice to see. And yes, he doesn't have the measurables, but he just loves the game of football. And if he ends up on the team, you can bet that he'd be learning from the best. And who knows, maybe he could be, maybe not the next Antonio Brown, but the next kind of late round receiver pick that turns into something really special. Third, I had DJ Moore. He's raw and talented, just the guy from the kid from Maryland, he actually received comparisons, as I mentioned, to Stephon Diggs. He's dangerous in the short and intermediate level, but concerns about his ability down the field is kind of concerning. I'm not sure if that's something that would change either. So I wouldn't want a one-dimensional receiver who can't catch the ball deep either. He did show ability as a returner, so that'll be interesting, but the fact is he's probably going to be picked before the Steelers would be looking for a wide receiver, so I wouldn't hold out hope for him coming to Pittsburgh. If he gets picked where he's supposed to be by the Steelers, then I think the Steelers have made the wrong selection. And last, I have Jordan Lasley, the UCLA product. Like I said, he's probably the most talented receiver I looked at least if not the most and the second most. He has fantastic ability and potential, but his character issues are a huge red flag for me. He doesn't take enough responsibility as a man right now, and perhaps he can mature, but I'm not interested in having another player who can be more of a problem than he is a help on the team. I don't want that on the Steelers right now, and I'd rather pass over him. Maybe he becomes a great player, but I'm very concerned about his character problems, and I'm much more likely to say just let him be someone else's problem. So,
future Cowboy or Bengal.
Yeah, but and he's also fast, so could be in Oakland or Las Vegas soon. So we'll see how that turns out. As far as NFL news goes, there's not a ton going on right now. The big news today is that Benny Logan, the former Chiefs defensive tackle, just joined the Tennessee Titans on a 1-year, $4 million deal. I mentioned him being a potentially interesting player for the Steelers to sign as a backup to Javon Hargrave or to potentially play alongside him when we went over defensive linemen. But I figured he'd be too expensive, and this is probably about $1 or $2 million more than I think the Steelers would have been willing to pay him. He's an interesting player, but it'll help the Titans' defense a little bit. But another free agent off the board. The NFL posted on their website their rankings of the top 100 free agents that were available this year, and I'm looking through the top 100 list. There's only like 4 or 5 players in the top 100 that haven't been signed yet. Have you gotten a chance to look at that?
No, I haven't looked at all, actually.
Alrighty. Well, beyond that, Mason Rudolph reportedly worked out for the Patriots and is going to be visiting the Bills, so just a couple of teams to keep your eye on. Potentially drafting a quarterback. I know he was meeting with the Steelers too, so just goes to show you that not the Steelers just bringing someone in doesn't mean that they're going to draft him either, but it's something interesting to keep in mind. Is there any other news that you saw, Austin, that you felt like you wanted to bring up?
Nope, I don't think there is.
Alrighty, so we're going to be wrapping up this episode for tonight. We'll be back soon. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions about the show, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Twitter at @stronger_steel. Check us out on Instagram at @stronger_steel_NFL. And check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. We post our episodes on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes if you're looking for us. And that does it for today. NFL Draft is now, let's see. It starts the 26th. 18 days away. So it's coming quick. And we still have a few more position groups to get to. We still have to go over running backs, edge rushers, outside linebackers, if you want to group the edge and outside together, inside linebackers, and safeties. So we're coming to a close soon here. So the NFL Draft is sooner than it probably seems. But we're right up against it, Austin. We still got some work to do, don't we?
Yep, just a few more episodes for the pre-draft analysis and the mock draft.
Alrighty, so thanks again for joining us tonight, and Austin, thank you again for doing this with me, and Steeler Nation, have a great night, and thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Have a good morning.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.